I was only eating muscle meat. My pain and insomnia getting worse and worse and worse. A carnivore diet is very dangerous, specifically due to...
Is the carnivore diet safe? This man claims the carnivore diet almost killed me. I'm Dr. Eric Westman, and this video was sent to me. I've been doing a lot of videos on carnivore diets, which are a subtype of a low-carb diet. You're probably getting the benefit of ketosis, nutritional ketosis, which is just your body burning fat. And after 2 days of not eating anything, everybody's body goes into nutritional ketosis. It's not harmful. After not eating carbs for 2 days, every body goes into nutritional ketosis. So it's a natural sort of thing to do. But so Frank Tufano at his website, I guess he teaches the carnivore diet and sells certain types of meats and has a pretty alarming story to tell, I think.
Today, we are going to discuss one of the biggest issues when following a carnivore diet, iron overload, which is particularly a problem when eating only muscle meat. This overload of iron on your liver can also lead to other issues, causing massive oxidative stress. Something like vitamin A toxicity, which is normally only possible when supplementing, can even manifest itself. So I've been following a carnivore diet for just over 7 years now. The first 6 years, amazing. High energy, great skin, great sleep, but then it all started going downhill. For those first 6 years on the diet, I used my own understanding of carnivore. In February of 2018, I was auditioning for the show MasterChef. I was in a hotel for 2 weeks, didn't sleep one night. Dude, I was sleeping next to the guy must have weighed 400 pounds, massive black dude, sounded like a mountain. I had earplugs in, headphones on, I had 2 pillows on my head, and dude, I couldn't.
Well, hang on. Okay, I guess we need to get through the hype, and I'm used to listening to, but I want to know the facts. Right? Just the facts. I haven't heard anything yet.
Not sleep one night. I was taking painkillers, Tylenol and Advil, eating mostly smoked fish and egg yolks. That's all they had in the supermarket. When I came back to New York, I was assuming I was going to be able to sleep, but it never restored. And this was going to be the worst few months of my life. So I couldn't figure out what was wrong. I tried everything. I even asked my viewers for help. And for months and months and months, all I was eating was ribeye steak and water to try to rule out any factors. And over the course of, the year and a half, 2 years I was suffering from this, I was only eating muscle meat. My pain and insomnia getting worse and worse and worse. Shortly after I came back from MasterChef, I actually went completely raw to remove any issues, eating only beef fat and beef. Very, very strict. That also didn't help.
Well, so if you've heard me speak about a carnivore diet before, what's lacking, sorely lacking, is evidence that's in published peer-reviewed journals. And yes, you can get a survey here and there, and I remember the Harvard group, David Ludwig and his group did a survey of those who say they're doing carnivore diets. But if you're going to be doing something this extreme, you want to follow a nutritional approach that gives you all the nutrients that you need. In fact, I don't promote the carnivore diet. I promote a diet that has some vegetables and greens in it, and eggs and poultry and fish. There's a element that there may be nutrients that are missing if you're not eating the organ meats. The video we just did, Dr. Gundry was talking about the sausages in Europe and Andorra, where they live the longest. And so sausages typically have the offal or the nose to tail, the other stuff in it. It's not just the muscle. And of course, liver is one of the most nutritious substances that we can have in terms of nutrients. So I was following just a all muscle meat kind of carnivore diet, and I remember being interviewed by one of the promotional carnivores. He said all he did is have muscle and he was fine. Well, people can climb Mount Everest and say I climbed Mount Everest. Not everyone can. So if you have one person who's zealotous in promoting it, it doesn't say that there's a second who can do it. Or in this case, let's see what happened to Frank.
Then I started incorporating dairy, which was when all hell broke loose. Guys, this was as close to torture as it could get. I didn't sleep for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time. My only saving grace being, perhaps one night I got 3 to 4 hours. Went to so many doctors, not one of them knew what was going on. By far the most miserable time in my life. Somehow I managed to make a YouTube video every single day, something I'm proud of to say the least, but putting myself through all of that to further the growth of my YouTube channel took a massive toll. Definitely changed my personality. So my speculation through this whole process was initially copper toxicity or some type of heavy metal issue. Then I had candida, which comes from heavy metal issues, turning into SIFO, also known as SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, even came up into my stomach, had H. pylori in some capacity. I thought it could have been vitamin A impairing my liver from past Accutane use, but that was over 6-7 years ago at this point, and I had been consuming liver for years without any issues whatsoever. My viewers helped me a lot with the speculation throughout this whole process, but even when you put a lot of intelligent minds together, it's hard to figure things out. So the overall message of this video is going to be that a carnivore diet is very dangerous, specifically due to the high iron content.
Well, now, again, let's be a little more precise with our language. It's dangerous, but I haven't been presented with any evidence of that yet.
The raw tards that follow Adonis von der Planets offer no solution. They have no clue what they're talking about. Simply saying, oh bro, your body is detoxing. Yeah, when my heart felt like it was going to explode because it was storing iron, I'm sure my body was detoxing eating that raw meat. Yeah, that's why I had insomnia for weeks at a time. They create this mysticism around a raw diet like it's some secret knowledge, holier than thou, and they're doing something special. Yet they haven't read one research paper in their lives, resulting in no understanding of human metabolism. I guess I shouldn't be insulting the raw tards because they are certainly a step ahead of the grain-fed carnivores who simply said, eat meat and drink water. Yet I had been doing that for almost 2 years at that point, and it wasn't working. I avoided all organ meats. In fact, the digestive issues and insomnia were worse when I was eating only meat. It's actually disgusting. If you go on any Reddit forum or Facebook group, their advice to anyone having issues on the diet is, just eat more fatty meat. Yeah, like eating 2 more pounds of estrogenic soy-fed feedlot meat is going to help my iron overload. I mean, it sure lines the pockets of big agriculture. Eat the meat you like.
So he's mentioned iron overload a few times. I haven't heard any detail. It's coming, but I guess I've been made to become used to the drama of lots of these videos, and the language still is a little, how should I say, dramatic. It's hard to know exactly what happened.
Like and can afford. They also said that I might have a histamine intolerance, but I was eating freshly slaughtered meat. I literally went down to Queens, cut open a goat, ate the meat the next day. Insomnia was even worse. One of my subscribers, you know who you are, buddy. I've been emailing him back and forth. Just spoke to him yesterday. You guys don't know this guy. He reached out to me randomly. He speculated that I had high iron levels and to get my ferritin checked. I kind of dismissed this, but it started making sense. And although I did speculate copper toxicity, heavy metals at some point, I never actually experimented with supplementation. And zinc, which is the antagonist of copper, is very high on a carnivore diet. So that gave me a head start. Vitamin A toxicity was on my mind this whole time, but I wasn't reacting to high vitamin A foods.
So by this time, I would have measured all of these things. One take-home point of this video is if you're not feeling well on any type of diet that you're doing, and it could be a vegan diet, might be bad for you, it could be a carnivore is bad for you, go see someone, a doctor trained in nutrition, who can help you try to figure things out. You don't need to speculate about a vitamin level. You can actually measure it. Now, sometimes they're not perfect. Sometimes the blood level doesn't reflect what's going on inside the tissues. But I certainly would like to have a sounding board or a validation, verification from someone in the medical nutrition world to help this fellow put this into a digestible and more credible format. I think there, as he's conjecturing, there's a lot of possibilities.
And raw dairy, even liver, the same way I was reacting to large amounts of red meat. One of the worst nights I slept was, just a few months ago, I had 2 local ribeye steaks from a farm. And I just was like, what is causing me to, the only thing is iron. These steaks don't have a considerable...
Hey, wait a minute. The only thing was iron. And then he lists all these other things. So, this may be a case of I'm suspecting something and therefore it's the cause. What evidence is there?
Steaks aren't too high in zinc. The steaks aren't too high in copper. The only thing that made sense was iron. Now, keep in mind, I don't have hemochromatosis. This has nothing to do with hemochromatosis. I got tested, nor was my iron saturation indicative of hemochromatosis. My liver was just storing iron.
So hemochromatosis is a genetic problem where you tend, eating a typical American diet even, you hang on to iron and it gets deposited in the liver and the pancreas. It's actually called bronze diabetes. If you have enough deposited in your pancreas, you can get diabetes. And the bronze element is because of the iron in the skin can make you look tan. But that's a pretty extreme case. Most of these cases are found by measuring the blood levels and doing ultrasounds to see deposition in the organs, things like that. But and even then, if you get a genetic test for hemochromatosis, it may be a false negative, meaning you might not have a full variation of it. You might have partly a variation. What I remember being taught about nutrition and iron is that there's enough iron in the diet for men don't need to add iron in a multivitamin. But if you're a menstruating female, then you do need to add iron. And so that's I wonder if he had been taking an iron supplement, or it could be just a multivitamin with iron in it, because men don't need to take extra iron if you're eating a relatively healthy diet. And it's true, the body has a hard time in general getting rid of extra iron. And then if you do have hemochromatosis, where you can't get rid of the iron, the remedy for that is that you go to the Red Cross and you donate blood, which will take off a certain amount of iron to have you be able to get the iron levels down out of the organs themselves. So, still talking about iron, I haven't heard how this was, the diagnosis was cinched yet.
And this is a problem I've observed in many, many, many of my clients. And not one of my clients have hemochromatosis. And this is really being brushed under the rug in the context of a carnivore diet. And I think the main reason for that is because it does take a long time to manifest itself. It took me maybe 1.5 years, 2 years of doing an improper carnivore diet for it to happen. I wouldn't say the mechanism behind this is too complex to understand, but I've rarely seen this talking about in any dietary community, let alone carnivore. So the simple answer to this is that vitamin A, retinol, is needed to activate something called ceruloplasmin, which manages copper and iron. And also, if you're not getting enough copper, if you're consuming a carnivore diet high in zinc and you have a copper deficiency, you can't transport iron. So vitamin A activates ceruloplasmin and you need copper to transport iron. This is what I believe is causing people to have a histamine issue on the carnivore diet. I think everyone with histamine problems has a copper deficiency. And since I wasn't consuming vitamin A, since I was only eating muscle meat, my zinc was out of whack, copper and iron were going unregulated. And iron and copper are heavy metals. They are extremely oxidative. One of the worst things you can consume if it becomes, rogue, unregulated. And what we mean here is organ damage, liver failure, respiratory issues.
Oh, but wait a minute. Where's the data?
Issues, heart palpitations, really, really bad, severe problems. When I consumed raw dairy, which triggered all of my issues, the dairy contained vitamin A, which likely mobilized some iron and copper, and the lactose in that also fed the pathogenic bacteria in the digestive tract. And the reason that I started getting pathogenic bacteria in my digestive tract is because candida and certain fungal infections are actually a preventative measure in the body against heavy metal toxicity. The yeast is taking up all of those metals so they don't cause oxidative stress and damage to your tissues. So when you eat something, if your liver is overloaded with iron, in that bile that's secreted from your liver, the iron will actually come out. So even if you're not eating high iron foods anymore, there's still some iron coming out of your liver, going into the digestive system, causing the overgrowth of pathogenic bacteria. Corn maker,
Well, again, that sounds like a great story. I'm still waiting for data.
aka Sean Baker, talked about hepcidin the other day, claiming that high insulin increases hepcidin, which doesn't really matter. Hepcidin being a substance in the body that regulates iron. And consuming 4 pounds of grain-fed meat per day is not going to fix your insulin resistance. And by no means...
So again, I hear an element now of if it's grain-fed beef, if it's corn-fed beef. Well, he does sell, I guess as a company, the grass-fed beef. And then he talks about a properly formulated type. I sense a bit of fear-mongering going on. I haven't heard any data yet. So that you'll buy a product that's not that meat out there, but the meat that we sell, and that's too bad. And no, I disagree. You can reverse insulin resistance using non-grass-fed beef. I've seen it in my clinic all the time. It's called lazy, dirty keto. It's what I have been teaching for 25 years, and then I heard that's what it was called. I didn't know there was any other way to do it. So all these new internet keto hacks, that sort of thing, that's not what I teach. But I'm still struggling. I'm being very patient to listen for data.
Only part of the picture. He is giving extremely dangerous advice, saying that people have lowered their iron levels on carnivore.
I've seen a number of people now with hemochromatosis that actually have improved significantly to where their iron levels come back to normal on a carnivore diet. Surprising is that, because we know that red meat particularly has a lot of iron in it.
Almost as cherry picking as a vegan, except he...
Well, so Frank, with all due respect, so I've met Sean Baker. He's a reasonable guy. He's an orthopedic surgeon. He's not nutrition trained. Like Frank says, we're self-trained, and I've been in this world for over 25 years now, thinking and talking about low-carb diets, and carnivore is only a recent thing. But if you accuse him of cherry picking, I'm still waiting to see if you're a case study yet, a case report, which would be the first report of someone having a problem. I'm not convinced yet that anything bad happened.
He's using his medical degree and rotten research or lack of research to promote grain-fed beef consumption instead of plants. It's funny. As soon as someone has the letters MD behind their name, they're suddenly an authority to nutrition, the appeal to authority, the fear-mongering of listen to anyone that's not a doctor. How dare you? That doctor received little to no nutritional training in medical school. You absolutely better listen to him. I hate to break it to you boys and girls, but the only people with in-depth nutritional knowledge have done all of the research on their own, and that's simply the truth. It so happens that there are also a lot of intelligent doctors that have done that research. These carnivore doctors likely not being any of them, considering the words that come out of their mouth. Another dangerous mechanism is that consuming feedlot meat can lower your testosterone. These conventionally raised animal products contain agrochemicals such as atrazine that have estrogenic properties, lowering your testosterone.
Yeah, okay, feedlot. I mean, where's the evidence of iron problems, please?
Low testosterone being correlated with high ferritin levels. Even if the estrogen in the beef doesn't lower your testosterone significantly, let's say you're using steroids, you're taking HRT, an iron overload from a poorly planned carnivore diet will inhibit your liver function once that iron starts building up, and that will result in low testosterone. If your liver isn't working, your body isn't going
That was in people with hemochromatosis, just as an aside. He doesn't have it.
to be able to produce testosterone. Basically, by following an unnatural diet, such as a grain-fed steak diet, copper and zinc go rogue, you don't have vitamin A to regulate them, and iron destroys...
Yeah, again, I would be more compelled if there was a number of, or a level checked, or and I find today that often the pot calling the kettle black sort of is that if he says other people are fear-mongering, that's what's going on here.
Destroys your organs, specifically your liver and your heart. Plant foods are copper dominant, whereas animal foods, mainly muscle meats, are zinc dominant. If you're not eating liver, which is an excellent source of copper, an excellent source of vitamin A to activate ceruloplasmin, you're going to get way too much zinc. And in a matter of time, start developing iron regulation issues from a copper deficiency. This includes histamine intolerance, this includes insomnia, this includes gut microbiome issues such as candida. And dairy plays a very important role in a balanced carnivore diet.
So that's quite a confident statement. You're going to get. Oh boy. But of course the internet you're taught by the extremes, and people, I find that surgeons tend to be very clear and without a doubt, when as an internist, I'm like, well, as best we can tell. So I'm still not seeing any evidence here.
As calcium is the only substance that has been shown to inhibit iron and zinc absorption, two things which you are getting way too much of on a carnivore diet. This would actually explain why the Maasai are such a long-lived group of people, and sometimes when we see people only eating meat, they don't end up doing so well. The Maasai were consuming large amounts of dairy. And if you've actually gotten yourself into this hole, if you have any of these symptoms, if you go to the doctor and get your ferritin tested and it's high, the only thing to really do is to give blood. Or you can have a hematologist schedule phlebotomies, which is them drawing out your blood more frequently. You're normally only allowed to donate blood every few months. And I have given blood every single week for the past 3 months. My ferritin a couple months back was about 450, and now my ferritin is 18.
There's the first data. I love it. So ferritin is a protein in the blood. You measure it goes along with iron levels, but it's also an acute phase reactant, meaning stress can influence it, and so the ferritin was high. That is, I think, what we have. There were symptoms. He'd been doing a muscle-based meat carnivore diet for years. Did fine, then went to a very stressful event, like trying to get on a TV show, and then couldn't sleep. And now, I guess, as a result of just giving blood, it feels better.
Ideally, you want your ferritin to be below 50. Otherwise, your liver is not going to be able to deload iron. I mean, I wish I would have had better health insurance. I could have gotten a scan of my liver to see how much iron is stored. But the second I gave...
So, time out. This would not be put past a peer review journal process to be published as a case study. The only evidence so far, and now with the statement that he didn't have any sort of organ measurement, we have no idea what was going on inside the body. Ferritin itself, and now what we're learning, even hemoglobin A1C, ketone levels, LDL levels, these are going to be different in people who don't eat carbs. And I'm not sure that it's bad have an open mind about it, but I'm pretty sure it's not always bad, like everyone is saying. So ferritin may be another thing that just changes in the blood and there's no manifestation of it. I'm reminded kind of like when the little girl with a super high LDL was studied and had heart disease at the age of 3. They assumed it was the LDL and they started lowering LDL. That's why your doctor checks for your LDL today. When there are a lot of other manifestations in that disease process, including a tendency toward clotting and inflammation that goes on with that disease. But so if it's just a ferritin level to diagnose iron overload, I'm because the other big possibility is that the levels are just different. And we're finding that people who do a carnivore diet may have a little higher glucose levels, that A1C thing. Or is it the red cells that live longer? That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a problem if it's just different than what we've seen before. But now he felt better giving blood, that I guess, and that's how he cinched the diagnosis. It's not enough for a case study. And if it was a drug, there's actually a process of re-administering the drug. So the drug companies have worked out a way to say, you can't claim that it's a drug until you do all of these different things. The temporal relationship of time, the re-challenging of a drug. So that if you're trying to protect the carnivore diet here or the iron issue, then you would have him re-challenge and see if the symptoms came back.
Blood that first time, the heart palpitations stopped. Everything is slowly getting better, and it's going to take a few months of consuming large amounts of copper like salmon, liver, and this is difficult because the only foods that really contain copper are liver in large amounts, and if your liver is no longer tolerating vitamin A because it's overloaded with iron, if your liver has iron in it, vitamin A is even harder for it to process. So now I can't even eat a lot of liver, the only real natural food source of copper. So I have to start using supplements, and there aren't even that many great plant food sources of copper in a bioavailable form, as copper is greatly inhibited by oxalates and phytic acid if they are in large amounts. So hopefully this helps some of you guys out. I don't want to detract people from following a carnivore, a meat-based diet in general. This is mainly to warn people about the dangers of this beef propaganda. There's too many other animal foods. You don't have to eat beef to be healthy. The last few weeks, last few months, I've been eating mostly pork, dairy, fish, eggs, shellfish even. And I've been doing a lot better, a lot more variety, supporting, people besides these cattle farmers. So it's important to have a balanced diet, and it's even more important to understand nutrition. To not trust these people. All these people are doing, these carnivores, they're not making educational videos like I am. They're not spending hours researching every day. They're using anecdotes and cherry picking and misleading you into their agenda. So by having an agenda to push certain products, certain meat consumption, not only are they lying to you about how to be optimally healthy, they're not informing you about nutrients, vitamins, minerals, elements, fatty acids. They're also hiding things like this from you that I had to figure out on my own. If you go on these Reddit forums and Facebook groups where I'm banned, these people are actively censoring negative stories about the carnivore diet, and this is very bad. These Facebook groups and these forums are likely going to be taken down at some point in the future because they are actively censoring people that are having problems with the carnivore diet. And we see this with a vegan diet. We see people have issues, but vegans don't usually censor that stuff. They let people talk about it and discuss it. These carnivores are literally just deleting posts, banning people, prohibiting people to participate, and this deplatforming, this censorship.
I don't know. I get lost in the he said, she said, the carnivore people. I mean, people who choose to eat meat. I mean, anyway, it's summing up. I think what we have is a story of someone who thinks that the iron overload was the cause of insomnia and maybe other nutritional deficiencies which were never measured. and went to several doctors who, and yeah, I agree, most doctors aren't going to know what to check. Sounds like you're up in the New York City area. I would be happy to, Frank, have you see a couple of friends of mine whom I've known through the years who are in the New York City area. They can test these things and help you figure out what's going on. No question. I mean, this is a very curious and smart person who's not totally trained in all of the breadth of medical care, but is learning as much as he can. So the final comment is, okay, let's assume this was iron overload. How common is it? You have one person, that's called a case study. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, that's called a case series, or 10 even, a series. What's needed to really, cry alarm is to have someone test, 1,000 people who do a carnivore diet and see how common this is. With drugs, what happens is, because the government requires it for a drug company to market a drug, they go through a formal process of growing the number of people on study drug compared to a placebo. So it's going to be very difficult to know how common this is by looking at internet people. In fact, you can have one vocal person have a problem, and then suddenly you think everyone's going to get it when it might only affect that one person. But there's a good biologic rationale for why iron might be kept in the body. I don't really think that ferritin is going to be a perfect way to diagnose iron overload. I'm sorry about that. And if I was reviewing this for a study, let's say, and I really highly encourage you, Frank, to be doing this or other stories, get a doctor involved, or even it could be a med student or someone who knows the language, who knows that you're going to have some minimal criteria of evidence that there's really iron deposition. The blood doesn't tell us exactly what's going on in the cells. But I guess as what would I do now? Well, if you're not feeling well and you're following a carnivore diet, check the ferritin. That's the easy out. And if the ferritin's high, do an ultrasound. And if the ultrasound shows iron deposition, you got a problem. So actually, you can take action. And again, I'm torn because a carnivore diet is very popular. It helps a lot of people fix things. But now what Frank's talking about is if you do it for a long period of time without attention to the liver and the other awful types of material, you might have nutritional deficiencies. And I think that's still an open question. This doesn't deter me from promoting what I do, which is meat, eggs, poultry, shellfish, a little bit of leafy greens, a little bit of vegetables, and some cheese and cream, and coffee. And I still have a problem with the carnivore diet because some of them won't even let you have coffee. I mean, but a lot of ways to be healthy. This is a bit overly dramatic. Maybe there's something to it. Maybe there's not. I hope that's helpful. If you don't have my top 10 tips on how to start keto right, check in the description. Like, subscribe, send to a friend or relative. This is a grassroots movement. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And check out adaptyourlifeacademy.com.